Hello, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Rebecca Pearl. I am with AARP Elder Watch. I am the Financial Literacy Program Specialist there. And today we are going to be discussing what to do when your loved one is a victim of a scam. So just a few reminders before we get started. AARP Elder Watch is a 19-year partnership with the Colorado Attorney General's office. We are very proud of it. We do education and outreach across Colorado on fraud prevention and financial security. We have a volunteer staffed fraud victim support helpline. We have a peer-to-peer financial counseling program, and you can give us a call whenever for either of these services at 800-222-4444 option 2. Today, remember to mute your phone line until the end, type your questions in the chat and we'll answer them at the end. And then, of course, you can find this presentation at AARP Colorado's YouTube. So before we get into what happens when someone is victimized by a scam, we're going to talk about the psychology behind victimization, how victimization occurs, and then we'll get to what to do when your loved one has been a victim of something like this. So the first thing we have to start off is why older adults are targeted. And there's a few different reasons for this. First off, cognitive decline in decision making as we age happens no matter what. You can play those brain games every single day, but cognitive decline will still happen. We actually make our best financial decisions according to a study by the Colorado Denver University. They have a gerontological research division, and they did a study that said we make our best financial decisions around age 54. So if you've passed age 54, that cognitive decline is already starting to set in. Of course, this is kind of a range, so you may still have a little more luck. Older adults are more trusting. They pick up the phone when it rings. They still expect, that the phone's going to ring and it's not going to be a scammer. It's going to be someone wanting to talk to them. They have more assets, meaning that there's more that can be stolen. Sometimes people are overconfident in beating the market just because with age comes wisdom. But that can be a vulnerability. And then there's an epidemic of social isolation. Older adults oftentimes are isolated socially. They don't have social interactions on a day-to-day basis because they're homebound or retired or have an illness that makes it difficult. And this can be a huge vulnerability that makes it so older adults are victims of scams. In 2020, older Americans were victimized out of more than $3 billion, which is a crazy amount of money at the hands of scammers. And it's probably more than that. This is just what's reported. So here's some overall vulnerabilities of fraud victims. Men are 19% more likely to end up a victim of an investment scam than women. This is because women generally invest less than men, and just because men are more willing to make investments without strategic planning beforehand, and women may take slightly more time to make sure that whatever investment they're going through is sound. People with graduate degrees are more likely to be a victim of a scam. So I think that shocks a lot of people, but the higher education you have, the more likely you are to be a victim of a scam. Remember, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And that goes for anything. Younger people are more likely to be scam victims, actually, and this usually surprises a lot of people as well, but older adults have a lot more to lose than younger people do. Most young people, speaking as one, have very, very few, if any, assets, and a lot of older adults have very many assets. So, it's more likely that a young person is going to be a victim of a scam. An older adult is going to lose significant more amount. Emotional hot button scams, such as diet pills, baldness cures, loan scams, any sort of get rich quick scam, they hit the um, one of our needs, right? We see, oh, this will help us, you know, get ahead in society, or this will help us get ahead in our finances, and we are drawn towards those scams because they are going to help us achieve a goal. And then we see a lot of repeat victimization in romance scams, power of attorney abuses, psychic scams, home repair scams, sweepstakes scams, and then overseas payment scams. And repeat victimization can be really devastating. We will talk a bit about that at the end. The persuasion tactics, scammers are good at what they do, and they use these 5 persuasion tactics to make it sound like their scam is legitimate. So one of them is phantom riches. Scammers use the prospect of wealth, of promising a big payout or a high rate of return to the victim at the end. You just have to pay $100 now, and we'll turn that $100 into $1 million. Or you just have to pay $2,000 now, and then that $2,000 will end up as your prize winnings and a Mercedes. That is a big way people get victimized by scams. This persuasion tactic is a very, very, very widely used, along with the second one of source credibility. Scammers appear to be trustworthy and have authority, and they victimize people using that status. So we hear a lot of times of the Social Security Administration scam. That is all about source credibility. They're saying this is officer so-and-so with the Social Security Administration. Automatically, source credibility is established, and we get scared. I get those phone calls and I know that they're a scam, but I still get kind of nervous. It's scary to get a call that says you're going to be arrested. But that really does make it so that source credibility is built up. And then social consensus comes in third. If there's a high demand for something, it must be good. Think about Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin right now is the really, really big currency we're seeing just all around. It's making waves across various different places, and including in scams. And there's a high demand for Bitcoin. People want to get in. But scammers are using that phantom riches, that source credibility, and the social consensus, all 3 persuasion tactics to lure people into these Bitcoin scams. They say, oh, I'm an investor that will put your money in a Bitcoin wallet so you can get, 100% rate of return. And these scams can be really, really serious. Reciprocity. Scammers victimize people by promising to return a small favor with a larger one in the end. Just send this money in an envelope. Just send just cash this check for me, and then I'll give you $1 million. Just take those gift cards to the post office, send them in the mail, and then I'll come visit. That is that reciprocity. I do something for you, you do something for me. But unfortunately, a lot of times scammers are not returning the favor. Scarcity, you have to do it right now. You have to get this deal right now. It will be gone tomorrow. This is something that fraudsters use to lead victims to believe that opportunity is going to be gone if they think about it. And all of these persuasion tactics get used about 5 times more than your average used car salesman. Just let that sink in for a second. Think about how many persuasion tactics are used at buying a used car. 5 times more. So it can be really overwhelming for vulnerable people when they get a call that's using any one of these persuasion tactics to not be a victim of a scam. Let's get into a little bit of the psychology behind scams. Scammers are good at what they do. We know they're good at what they do. $3 billion in 2020. They're obviously good at what they do. The ultimate goal of every single scammer is to get the target in a heightened emotional state. under what we call the ether, which is all about it drives our fear, our need, and our excitement, right? And under the ether, we are no longer able to access our logical thinking processes. Again, under the ether, we are no longer able to access our logical thinking processes. I talk to scam victims all the time that they pick up the phone, it's a scammer, it's your typical social security call, right? And they get under the ether right away. And they say, after they get off the phone, I knew it was a scam. I don't know what happened. I knew I shouldn't have done it. It's because they're under the ether, no longer able to access our logical thinking processes. And that is so important to understand when looking at scam victimization as a whole. Scammers use narcissism. They believe that the rules do not apply to them. That's why, you can go through every single government regulation possible when working on getting that money back from that home repair scammer, but they believe the rules don't apply to them and no one's going to come after them. They may have antisocial tendencies such as sociopathy, where they have no empathy for others, and that will come through a lot of times in the end of the scam, once the victim realizes that it is a scam and says, oh, this is a scam, that lack of empathy will come out in the targeted response that the scammer then does to the victim. Scammers sometimes feel that they're bounded ethically to the scam. They have to do it to get money for their family. They have to do it to, be a part of a group, or they have to do it to maintain a job, and they're bounded ethically to these scams. And sometimes a scam starts small and grows larger and larger and larger. And then at that point, the scammer is just too caught up to leave. So it continues to go on. So we are going to just discuss real briefly what it looks like to go under the ether. And I'm going to read this quote and we are going to play a little video. But this is legitimate audio from, this is a legitimate quote from a Social Security Administration call. This is Officer Smith and I'm calling from the San Diego County Sheriff's Office. It is my duty to inform you that because you failed to respond to jury duty notices, there are 2 warrants out for your arrest. I'm sure many of you have gotten this call before. So let's see what happens when the call puts us under the ether. So that is what happens. That's what the process looks like when someone is put under the ether. And let's take a look at who is behind the scam. These are our scammers. Jesse Lopez as Officer Smith and Joseph Pate as Sergeant Dwight Garrison. And you will be surprised to find out they were in Autry State Prison in California. We actually have some footage of the scammers at work from their prison cells that was taken as an undercover recording. But sometimes these scams do originate in places like prisons. So let's take a look. So they are trying to get someone's phone number to scam that person. And this scam ring here is another video of the scam happening. They use these legitimate tactics, that scarcity, that it must happen now, the source credibility that makes it seem like this is so legitimate. And that is how so many people get victimized by these scams. And let's go back to Kai's story of going under the ether. So Kai actually traveled down to Atlanta, Georgia, to testify in front of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, because these scammers were actually indicted, and were charged with many different. They were charged with a bunch of different crimes, as well as quite a few other people that were also in on the scam, including prison guards, people on the outside, and other prisoners inside the prison. So these scams can be wide. They can cast really wide nets. Let's talk a little bit about the language of fraud before we continue on. Victim language, when we talk about financial exploitation and frauds and scams, a lot of times is blaming the victim. And this can be very difficult when we try to, first off, legitimize that frauds and scams are legitimate crimes. You're not stupid. It's like someone walked into your house and took your money from you. Um, and it can be really exhausting for a victim to be blamed over and over again for a crime that was committed against them. Let's take a look at this language, right? So A victim of a financial crime is as much of a victim as a victim of a violent crime. The language differences are really, really stark. Financial crime victims, we talk about them by saying, oh, she was duped, he fell for it, he got taken advantage of, they were scammed. We do not put the onus on the victim in terms of violent crimes. She was held at gunpoint. They were viciously assaulted. He was brutally murdered. Those are completely different ways to chronicle victims. And we are making an active effort to change the language that we use when we are talking about financial crime victims. So next time someone comes to you and they say, um, they want to talk to you about potentially being a victim of a scam, think about what language you're going to use when you discuss. And then let's talk a little bit about the language of shame. These are a few statements of people responding to scam victims. And let's just look at how people shame these victims. I cannot fathom the level of gullibility it would take for someone to send money to someone they have never met. It's just beyond my level of comprehension. This is the kindest way I can express what I'm thinking right now. Very sad, but really, these women need their heads screwed on properly. Good God, where has common sense gone? I know people are lonely. Hell, I'm lonely, but I'm not stupid. As a victim, this language can be devastating to hear. It sounds like people are not taking you seriously, even though something terrible has happened. So we really need to think about how we can reframe how we talk to victims and just our loved ones when they face something very challenging, financial or not. If your loved one is a victim of a fraud or a scam, start out by having a conversation with them about how you're worried about their financial safety and security. Try to poke holes in the scammer's narrative by using reverse image searches for photos that they've sent, pointing out red flags of scams, and explaining being under the ether. Attempt to get the victim to cut off all contact with the scammer. This is one of the most important parts, is cutting off all contact with the scammer, because once that contact is cut off, that's it, it's done. And now the recovery process can start. If your loved one won't listen to you, see if they'll listen to a trusted mentor, a different family member or friend, a priest, a pastor, a rabbi, a police officer, or another third party. We do quite a few financial exploitation, fraud, long-term fraud interventions. So you can always give us a call and we are happy to assist as well. And then we have a few resources to discuss. So there is AARP just launched peer victim support groups. These are groups of 10 for chronic scam victims or people that have been severely victimized and their family members or loved ones. You can attend as many sessions as you would like, and you can do that by visiting aarp.org/fraud support or by calling AARP Elder Watch at 1-800-222-4444 option 2. The other resource is Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners. If you are in immediate crisis, give them a call or text 1-844-493-8255. Text talk to 38255 or visit them online at RockyMountainRMCrisisPartners.org. And then lastly, if you are in immediate danger or feel that you are unsafe, of course, please call 911. If you have questions, feel free to give us a call, and thank you so much for joining us today.